Happy New Year!
Happy New Year to you too. Welcome back. That was
2024.
Quite the year.
Quite the year. Quite the year. Ready for the next one?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm super stoked. I want to give a big shout out to everyone that listened this past year. That was our first year, and today marks the official beginning of our 2024 season here on JKMoto Podcast. So I think it was a great first year. Obviously, we started kind of halfway through. Yeah. What, about a quarter of the way through, I guess?
It'll be good. Well, why don't you get the business part out of the way?
The business part?
The business part. Have you worked on your introduction?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. I just had a drink, so it's going to be real. Well, welcome back to your favorite motorcycle podcast, JKMoto Podcast. Motorcycle podcast for every average, everyday motorcycler out there, especially track goer, track racer, club racer, even Moto America racer, whatever you might be. This is the spot. We talk about it all. And we don't know it all, but we won't tell you anything that ain't true. So, brought to you this week by Working Class Customs, a custom fabrication shop out of northern Utah. You can ask Cole about any more info on that. Welcome back.
Welcome back. So, we have a special guest to start out the 2024 year. New acquaintance to me. Great guy. Let's roll that intro and get Jeff Whitmer on here.
Sounds good. Send the intro.
Yesterday at one point, I was in sick. Miles an hour.
And we're back.
We're back and live.
Man, I was going to change that for 24.
Well, hey, how about that new intro, though?
The new intro is good. I like it.
It is a good new intro. Not too much different. If you're just listening, you probably couldn't quite tell the differences, but slide on over to YouTube at Working Class Customs YouTube channel. It's where we're at. And watch the intro there. It's pretty sweet. Pretty sweet intro. Got some new stuff. And then real quick, before we bring our guest on, I wanted to give a shout out to a couple guys that reached out to us. First off, we got Nick. Again, I'm keeping the last names out of it unless you message me again and say you want your last name in it. But Nick messaged me some weeks ago about some brakes on a Gixxer. He goes to the track quite a bit. So thanks for reaching out, Nick. Appreciate it. Appreciate you listening. And then also, James just recently reached out to us this past weekend. Week. About UMC, USBA, just kind of general stuff like that. So thanks, James. Hopefully got some questions answered for you and for both of you, honestly, and hopefully more answers to come. So without further ado, should we bring a guest on?
Yes, sir. Hello, Jeff. Welcome to the show. Today we're pleased to have Jeff Whitmer, former WSMC racer, current CVMA racer. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I'm missing there, but that's what this is all about. We're going to get into some of that.
Sure.
Currently the service manager for Long Beach BMW.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what's on the shirt there, Jeff?
It's the shop that I work, Long Beach BMW Motorcycles.
If I could, I want to take this way back. You know, young guys like me and you. It's not that far back, but way back.
It's a ways back there.
You guys know what year it is?
Yeah, they just changed it. It's easy to remember when they just changed it.
Except for when you're writing it.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true. So I want, for the audience, I had the pleasure of meeting you at CVMA round 3.
Yep.
And we got to talk a little bit there. I've heard some things about you, through mutual acquaintances. Because I ride a BMW, they're always, you got to talk to Jeff. You got to talk to Jeff. So we got to chat about that some. But yeah. I want to go way back. And we'll get back to CVMA and all that fun stuff, but way back.
Okay.
What got you into riding motorcycles?
As long as I could remember, my dad always had bikes. He was into the old 2-stroke Yamahas, like the RDs.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember, 4 or 5 years old. He was at work. Mom was in the house. I was out under the little garage area that we had, and the bike was sitting there on the center stand. I remember somehow getting the fuel tank opened and sticking my hand down in the tank, sloshing the fuel around, and knocking the bike over, breaking the turn signals off of it, and
solid.
trying to figure out how to start it. And it was shortly thereafter my dad, okay, well, if you're going to be around these things, let's, start showing you the right way and ride me around. So about 4 or 5, he bought me a mini bike, and I don't think I've been without a bike since.
Wow.
So,
all right.
So
talking mini for dirt, mini for road.
No, it was a dirt bike, one of the old full start Briggs and Stratton engine, rigid frame mini bikes. Like,
yeah,
I think it was a Paco.
Okay, gotcha. Tracking.
So started out on dirt.
Yeah, rode quite a bit of dirt. Turned 16. I bought my first street bike, was oddly enough an RD 350. It had a bunch of stuff done to it, and rode it around for a while, blew it up, rebuilt it without having any instruction on how to do it, and kind of figured it out. And I remember my dad coming into the garage one night saying, "Oh yeah, joking around, it'll never run again." And a day or two later, I ripped it up and down the street and kind of actually gave up on it shortly thereafter and just bought another bike.
Yeah, that's usually easier.
Yeah. Back then you could buy a decent used bike for $300-400 and, go out and ride.
Oh man, $300 or $400 for a motorcycle. Wow.
Yeah. Well, brand new, I think they were $2,500, $3,000. And then actually, I one little blurb in there. Before I even had my license, I'd missed a school bus one day, and my dad had an old GS. I think at that time it was like an 850, and I missed a school bus and was kind of not showing up for school enough. Needed to be there, so I missed the school bus. Found the keys to Dad's bike and rode to school that day. Wasn't even 16 yet, 14, 15, something like that. And
you're saying
on the way home, got pulled over for like 85 and a 45. But back then it was small town Pennsylvania where I'm from. Back then it wasn't a big deal. I got a little bit of tune out by the deputy, and he actually knew my dad. Told me to make sure that my dad knew he would be reaching out to him in the next couple of days and letting him know, which he never did, but I told on myself.
Yeah, it's a good trick they play sometimes.
Yeah.
Hey, you made it to school though, right?
Oh yeah. And that was my emphasis for the conversation.
I went to school.
The whole day?
Straight to and straight from.
There you go. That's not bad. Yeah. I don't know if I could be mad at that.
You started missing the bus more often after that, or?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no, when I finally got my license, I had a car or a bike for all of that, so it didn't matter.
That was you answered one of my questions. So you're in California now.
Correct.
You just said you were from Pennsylvania.
Correct.
So how do we get to California from Pennsylvania?
So military, joined the Air Force and ended up out here, and thought that I hated it when I got out, went back to Pennsylvania, kind of worked for a big company that had me bouncing all over, and realized the first winter hit, kind of realized how much I did kind of enjoy California. And
Northeast.
A couple of years, but got back out here.
Yeah, that's what our friend Easton's feeling right now.
Yeah, just a little bit.
He's originally from Utah. He doesn't know that he misses the winters.
Yeah.
Well, let me put it to you this way: if I didn't work for the people that I work for, I would have already been in South Carolina or Georgia.
Gotcha. All right. Well, hey, there's a plus.
Yeah.
Easton can show you around.
Yeah. It's kind of where he was at.
Honestly, yeah. Come out whenever. There's a racetrack out here somewhere.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of racetracks out there.
That's what I saw.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
There are.
We've had the opportunity to hit quite a few of them, but so that got you on the motorcycles from a young age.
Yep.
So through high school, you're riding a bike. What was your next bike?
Oh, I had an RD 350, had a GS 500, CX 500 turbo.
Ooh. All right.
Bunch of Yamahas, R1s, R6s, CBR, a handful of BMWs now. I've had a lot of everything except Kawasaki's. So
hey, you fit right in. That's good.
Yeah. Hey, Lugnut. Shout out to you, buddy.
Yeah.
Now a couple things are coming together there now.
Yeah.
Easton has a habit of trying to make the Cowie guys angry.
I got nothing against him. Kind of. Maybe a few things, but whatever.
So you rode a lot of bikes. What got you to go to a track your first time?
So, a couple of my buddies, when I moved back out to California, I had been dirt riding in Pennsylvania, back to dirt riding back there. When I came back out here, all my buddies were on street bikes. So I went and got a street bike. And it was actually one of those Honda Magnas, the newer style.
Okay.
And I would go out on these group rides and just embarrass most of the guys on sport bikes.
Yikes.
And a couple of my buddies were like, dude, get a bike. So I ended up buying a 900RR back when that was like the bike to have.
Right.
Started riding the canyons with those guys, doing that. And one of my buddies who had the same bike drugged me out to a fast track day at Big Willow and did my first track day there. And that's kind of where the bug hit. It's like, okay, I don't need to be doing this on the streets anymore. I mean, I still did, but not as much as I enjoyed going to the track.
I've found, at least, I think once you go to the track, it kind of takes the fun out of the.
There's too many rules on the street. There's too many rules.
Yeah.
Too many unknowns, too many rules, too many, maybe cops are there. You never know what there might be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Big Willow, you're in California still? I'm assuming Long Beach. I don't know California that well. Just south of LA, question mark?
Long Beach is, it's about 15, 20 miles, maybe south of downtown LA.
Okay.
So a 3-hour drive.
Yeah, most days.
Yeah, with LA traffic.
I actually live in an area called Temecula.
Okay.
It's SoCal's wine country. An hour north of San Diego, hour-ish southeast of LA.
Okay, so you got quite the commute then.
Yeah, and I do it on two wheels most of the time. I couldn't do that drive every day.
Yeah, but
I can't live up there either. I will not live in LA County.
So I'm assuming that's on a BMW, but which one are you choosing to make a commute with?
Right now, I'm riding a R18 bagger back and forth most of the time. A GS. I've had a couple of RTs. Just kind of whatever. I've got access to a lot of different things, and then my personal stuff. So,
I need to take a quick branch because I'm going to get that question answered. Easton.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
R9T.
Okay.
They make an R9T racer?
They used to. It was like a 1 or 2 model year deal.
Are those hard to get your hands on?
Fairly. They're out there. They're just a little tougher to find.
Okay. That wasn't the question I had. So unless you have something else.
It's a question I had. I want one of those.
So it actually doesn't have the good suspension on it. So the Roadster is probably the better bike. The Racer is probably the cooler looking.
I know not much about them other than I like the look.
Ain't a bad place to start. I at least like the look of the bike, right?
Nothing at all wrong with that.
Yeah. My question for you on you're saying you're commuting on a couple different options. Is that a perk of working at a dealership? Is that just your dealership, or is that maybe something that we shouldn't know about? Question mark.
So a lot of BMW dealers have BMW, unlike a lot of other. Like I spent a long time in the Japanese dealerships, and BMW is one of the few that allows dealers to actually put a unit into demo service.
Okay.
And so, I get to ride demos. I get to ride fleet bikes, being a service manager. If we've got a bike that is maybe being a little finicky for a technician and, doesn't always show symptoms of what the customer's problem or concern is, I'll ride a customer bike back and forth. New models I need to be able to know what I'm talking about when I'm helping somebody with one. So, I'll ride it and get familiar with it.
Okay. Yeah, 100%. I mean, that makes sense. One, if you're riding it around and someone sees it and they're like, hey, I like that. It's very easy to, well, turns out I sell these. And then two, I love that comment of actually getting to know it. The amount of times you go to a dealer and the dudes are just like, I don't know. Actually, the book says, yeah, here, you can just read this. And you're like, I want to know, man, should I buy this bike or not? So
right.
That's nice to hear the opposite from someone that's actually in the business. So that's good.
Yeah. BMW is one of the brands that actually encourage dealership employees to use and get to know the product. And customers can can typically weed out the people that have no idea what they're talking about. And at least in the BMW world. In the Japanese world, everybody's got an opinion.
Right.
It's hard to validate every opinion, but everybody's got one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I also feel like BMW is a little easier because less likely to find a BMW mixed with everything else. Whereas I don't know how dealers work, but I've definitely seen some dealers where you get Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki just all in one shot. Different rooms, right? They got their own separate rooms, but they're all in one shot. So
yeah. And that most of my career in the motorcycle business has been at those multi-lines, where we've had, all of the, all four big Japanese, Polaris, Can-Am, that kind of stuff. And, it was nice because you always had something that was a commodity. And, most young guys can't always qualify for exactly what they want. But if you've got four options, sooner or later, somebody's going to help them out.
Yeah, they end up with the Gixxer, see, Easton?
Yeah, exactly. Or a Cowie.
Yeah, Cowie, okay, sure.
Yeah.
I think there's a way higher class than that. Come on.
I was just going to say, in my experience, to go back a little bit to what you said about knowing what you're talking about at a dealership and that being refreshing. I think it's not true for everybody. Some people buy a whatever car or whatever bike because it's just to get from A to B. Mm-hmm. But it's probably more likely in the motorcycling world that people are buying it because they're somewhat passionate about it. And therefore you have fanboys of whatever brand,
right?
They come in, I want to go to what dealership, whatever. And I appreciate the guy selling it to me, knowing at least what I know. It's always, it's always offensive when you go in and start telling them models and they like, we make that,
That's when they call Jeff over. They're like, hey, Jeff, come. Well, hey, speaking of that, though, also kind of just on the dealer subject, I think we can hang out here for maybe a little bit. We, as a podcast, I think are centered around going to the racetrack and racing. I've always kind of been curious because I've walked into cycle gears and motorcycle dealers and just other random shops, and it's very rare that any of those people can give you any information on going to a racetrack, even at all.
Right.
For me, in my experience. So I guess biggest question, one, what are your opinions and thoughts on that? And then two, is Long Beach any different than that? I mean, obviously you're there, so that's got to help a little bit, but.
So there's a couple of answers to that question, a couple parts to the answer to that question.
Okay.
Most dealership principals do not see the value in backing employees, customers in going to the racetrack. They'll support them, but not anything that will really amount to much other than,
right.
Maybe a discount on parts and throw them an easy up or something. That's the more common thing. And a lot of the people that work at dealerships might not be financially in a position to do a lot of track days and get into club racing.
Right.
So without the help from a dealer, it kind of ties their hands a little bit. And that's actually true across the board of all the brands. The owners at Long Beach, who I work for, David and Charles, actually came to me right before COVID hit. And hey, look, we do a lot of police bike business. We do a lot of the GSs because we're involved with both of those communities.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really have anybody on the RRs and this new bike. It's going to be a good seller. We just need to be in that space.
Right.
And we know that you're a track day guy and we'd like, if we give you a bike to use and kind of help you out a little bit, would you get out there and do some of this stuff and represent us? So I worked for an owner that helped me out quite a bit, but never like these guys. Back when I was at a multi-line Japanese shop between Yamaha and the owner that I worked for at that time, they gave me a little bit of help, but it was still a lot of money out of my pocket, where with Long Beach, they're footing most of the bill. I still have my own expenses in it, but I'm out there because they wanted me to be, and they're footing most of the bill.
Sweet.
And, being out there has turned into what they wanted it to. They wanted people to realize, hey, Long Beach sells double R's as well as they do GSs and police bikes and all these other things. And it's just worked out really well. Cole, I don't know if you met him when he was out there with us, but Steve Weir, the race engineer from BMW.
I seen him out there. I didn't get a chance to talk to him.
Yeah, he and I have become very good friends, and he's actually, hey man, I can't take care of these guys. Can you help me out with these guys? And if it's a local dealer or a local guy close by the dealership, or even guys that may be a little bit further away, and he knows that I'll be able to take care of them and get them what they need. He's actually having me work with guys too, so it's been pretty cool. The last 4 years have been like a really, really cool time. And I've seen a lot of growth for BMW in the sport bike world, the track days and now racing. We've got, when I first went out there, I was the very first new BMW on the grids that I know of at CVMA. There were a handful of the older bikes, and then they kind of went away. And now it's, we've got 6 or 7 of us now on the new bikes. So.
Decent amount. That's sweet. No, that's super good to hear. I kind of, I wonder, do you think that's a BMW thing? Do you think that's just the owners down there specifically are smart enough to do that? Or
I think it's mostly on David and Charles, the owners of Long Beach. They recognized, hey, we dedicate a lot of time, manpower, and resources to these other aspects of our business. This is the one that we're lacking on. So, hey, let's apply some effort there, and it's paid off. We've been, I've been with them since 2019. I think out of the last 20 years that they've been in business, I think like twice maybe they were not the number one dealer in the country.
Okay, wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, good. They're really great guys, and they're really sharp. They get the business, they get people, which is again one of the biggest reasons why I'm riding 80 miles each way to work.
Yeah, well,
in California.
In California, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. I mean, you kind of just explained that, but you do think that has definitely had let's talk a little bit less on what it's done for the dealership. Anyone listening that owns a dealership, there's your, there's your key right there. Maybe go to a racetrack here or there. But on the other side of things, that dealership being so helpful, do you think that's helped out the motorcycle racing community down in California at all?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think because of the investment that they've made in me and me being there, has opened a lot of eyes to BMWs, guys that may not have thought about BMW in the past.
Right.
Now they're riding BMWs.
Okay.
Got one guy on our Apex team that he was on a Yamaha when I met him. Then he went to an Aprilia. Now he's got a BMW. He just did the best lap he's ever done out of Chuckwalla on a BMW. Cole, I think you saw him, how happy he was about that last round.
Yeah. He was giddy.
Yeah. I mean, he fell to his knees in tears. He was so happy. So,
yeah. And to go back to what you said earlier, not to keep going back, but the support from BMW being that you or being that Steve, I mean, I just getting one little glimpse of CVMA, right? I was staying at the aisle I was at, but I didn't notice any engineers from Honda walking around talking to any of their people or any of the other brands.
Need all of those over in MotoGP right now. So
yeah,
they're all busy.
No, and Cole, that's a really good point too. As long as I've been in this industry, BMW is the only manufacturer that I've ever worked with that had somebody like Steve at events like CVMA and the CRA stuff and
on the lower level.
Right, at the club level. And, he's at every Moto America round with all the BMW teams as well. He was a big part of the Titleist team. And, I don't want to give him all the credit, but Steve was definitely an integral part of that team and their success. Corey, PJ, those guys, they all learned, whether their crew chiefs want to admit it or not, Steve had some input that helped move that team along a little bit. So, it'll be interesting to see what this new BMW team and I guess it's going to be Cam and JD Beach on the Titleist bikes this year. See how they do. I don't know how much Steve's going to be involved with that new team out of Florida. What is it, Top Pro or something?
Yeah, Top Pro with Sean Dillon Kelly.
Yeah, SDK and I forget who his teammate's going to be, but don't know who their race engineer is. But I'm sure Steve will have his fingers in their program a little here and there too.
Well, we're not trying to make it, I'm chuckling because Easton accuses me sometimes of trying to make this the BMW show, but
Well, I mean, to be fair, you brought a BMW dealership guy on this week, so I don't know how
So
it's
Ethan,
supposed to be anything else.
just so that you know, if I didn't work for BMW, I would be at a Yamaha shop.
Okay, interesting. I
So
was gonna add,
I'm a Yamaha guy at heart, but
Okay.
BMW, I'm definitely a BMW guy now. I've drank the German Kool-Aid.
yes, a Kool-Aid. There are two among us tonight that have done that. I myself have not ridden the new one on the track yet, but I took his 22 out a couple different times, and personally, I had a couple small issues with it. Very, very like details.
here he goes. Now we
Details.
started him.
So let's hear it.
Yeah,
Well,
shut
okay.
him
Yeah,
down, Jeff.
Sure, why not? My issues with the bike, and I had to remind myself I was riding a 2022 BMW S1000 RR
In 22 for the record.
in 2022. Yep, with exhaust and a tune, and on a couple things done to it, and I was like, what are you freaking out about here? Just enjoy the bike. But they were very minute, but they definitely gave me kind of a almost disconnect from the bike. I've never been a fan of electronic throttles, and out of the ones that I've ridden, BMW has done the worst with it, in my opinion. And then on top of that, all of the mechanics, i.e. the clutch and the brake and the gear shifter, felt almost... I literally got off his bike, I parked it, and I went and looked at the gear shifter to make sure it was actually still connected to the transmission, because I felt like I was only shifting against a pressure pad rather than actually shifting gears, which I understand it's got the quick shifter on it, so it's going to have that feeling to it a little bit, but I didn't have the mechanical feel. It just didn't feel...
He thinks it's too good.
I don't know.
Sounds that way. Okay, so any idea what mode it was in when you were riding it?
I don't know. Not sure.
Because
Probably-
the modes
well-
play a big part of how the throttle acts.
Yeah, as far as suspension and all of that, I think it was in...
I think it was in dynamic
Yeah,
when he
dynamic,
left.
that's the word.
Who knows what he did after he left the house,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I just wrote it. All right, I just wrote it. Passed a cop, I'll have you know, in a school zone. That was a good time.
Usually is.
But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I had to remind myself what I was doing, and I was sitting there like trying to judge this bike. I was like, those are very minute and very... I could easily get over them. Very, very easily. Not actual like issues, but I've got a 2019 Aprilia in the garage, and I was expecting a lot of those same feelings, and I don't have them. I felt almost disconnected from the BMW because it felt like I was putting input, the computer was getting the input, and the computer was riding the bike rather than me, basically.
Which is why I asked what mode you were in, because it sounded like it was one of the lower modes.
Yeah, which would make sense, and I'll take that. Like I said, I haven't taken one out on the track yet or anything like that, so I don't have a ton of room to work on. Those are just kind of my initial thoughts on that bike.
And the Aprilias are very visceral. They definitely have that old school hot rod kind of feel, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I'd agree with that.
Kind of more of a raw, edgier feel to them. Kind of the Yamaha's the same way. I think the Suzuki's are the same way. I think Hondas and Cowies are probably a little bit more numb.
Okay. Interesting.
But I can see exactly where you're coming from. My guess is, though, it was probably not in one of the race modes with the settings adjusted.
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't. We didn't adjust anything.
It definitely wasn't in a
for me
race
or-
pro mode.
Yeah.
So, but interesting to hear that at least the feelings are somewhat justified, right?
Yeah.
So back to, you kind of already answered that with your Yamaha comment, but you've been riding since you're 5 years old. We won't get into how old anyone is tonight, but there's a lot of bikes between then and now. Is there one specific bike that either you miss or at least was just like, if I had to tell anyone this is the bike to go get, is there one that you would say along the way?
I've said this repeatedly. The bike that I enjoyed the most was my 07, 08 R1s. I had an 07 that was done up. I had a buddy that was, he was the last few years of WSMC. He was the track champ. Chuck Graves helped him out quite a bit. A lot of the chassis numbers from his bike went into my bike and a few things. The bikes were just so easy to ride. It was just a really good all around bike. And then I got rid of my 07 because everybody was like, oh, yeah, you got to have a crossplane. I had an 09 for like 2 weeks, got rid of it, and went and found a leftover 08. It was just, I hated that first gen crossplane.
Interesting.
But then I had a 15, and it was like, oh, okay, this is a crossplane. This is what this bike should have been all along.
Interesting. Do you know is there anything that stands out? Because I'm not super well versed with Yamaha. I knew they went from flat plane to cross plane, and I actually recently learned, I thought it was with that newer body style. I recently learned that it was back in 2009. So
yeah, the 09 to 14 was the frame. What I didn't like about it was the frame was really soft and had a lot of flex to it, and it kind of, unless you did a lot of modifications to it, at least even as a track day bike, it put too much out on the front of the bike. It wasn't very well balanced.
Okay.
Where like the 07, 08 was a really good balance, really neutral bike. And then they went back to that. They changed the motor a little bit for the 15s and changed the chassis a lot. And that's when the 15 was a really good bike too. The 15 and up, the chassis are all real similar. Okay. Just the electronics on them have improved since 15.
Yeah, that feels like a kind of recurring theme between a lot of bikes. Is we found something that works, and we're just updating electronics until we figure out where we want to go. So, but all right, well, that's a good explanation. So if you're going to buy non-new body style, in your opinion anyway, stay away from the crossplane crank.
No. The crossplane is 09 and up. Even the new bikes are a crossplane. I don't like the 09 to 14s. That's as a street bike, it's probably okay. As a track bike, no.
Fair enough. But yeah, that's just kind of crazy.
What is the one they came out with? Now we're on Yamaha. What's the one they came out with that had a higher or a lower red line than all the other ones that you could get for a cheaper price?
Oh, the R1S.
Yes.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it was like 15, 16, 16, 17, something like that.
Yeah.
You're saying a lower red line?
Yeah, so it had a heavier crank and rods in it.
Okay.
It was like the rods and crank out of the first gen versus the updated bike.
Okay, so not just a simple tune away from being. So I was like, that sounds
it was mechanically quite a bit different.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, not all R1s are created equal, is what I'm saying. Right. Stay away from that one.
So S stands for slow.
Yes.
Yep.
And M stands for motorcycle.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll go with it. Okay, let's get back to the racing. So you showed up to a track day with a 900 RR.
Yeah. So did a couple of track days on that, and that back then it was I think it was only one track day provider. It was Fast Track Riders, and I did a few weekends there, and I got to meet the local Yamaha rep who actually lived here in Temecula, and him and I got to be pretty good friends, and he actually got me on a R1 in '98, kind of brought me into the Yamaha fold at that time. From there, I did a couple of track days on that R1 on Fast Track Fridays, we called them. It was the Friday practice ahead of the WSMC race weekends, kind of like Apex does with CVMA.
Mm-hmm.
And after about the third track day, I think it was, on that R1, the guy that owned Fast Track at that time, Tom Serra, and my buddy Rocky Aiello, who at that time worked for Yamaha, came to me at the end of a Friday and were like, hey, here's your lap times for the day. Wow. Okay, cool. So yeah, we went ahead and signed you up to race this weekend. You're doing the new racer school and your first novice race this weekend. I'm like, whoa, I don't have a race bike. I got to be at work tomorrow. I rattled off the whole list, and Rocky was like, I already talked to your boss. You're good to go for tomorrow. We took care of your new racer school. Your R1's getting wired up and everything tonight. Trust us. You're doing this. So
there's some good friends right there.
Yeah. So they kind of twisted my arm, got me going. I think I did the new racer school the following day, and I did my first novice race that Sunday. It was like the last race of the day. WSMC was kind of smart about the novice races. They kept it towards the end of the day so that, the crashes didn't hold up the big show. And I started 25th and finished 5th, my first novice race.
Oh, wow.
At WSMC, and that was like May of 99, I think it was. Okay. 98, 99, something like that.
So you started 25th. Do you remember how
Yep.
big the grid was total?
Probably 25 or 30 people. I was towards the back since I post entered and just did the school and everything. So back then, WSMC did it by when your entry hit. It wasn't like points or qualifying or anything. It was just when you entered. So I would have been towards the back of the field. So 25 to 30 people, somewhere in there.
Okay. That'll come into play later. Some questions I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
All right.
finished
So,
fifth,
yeah.
and they figured they made a good investment at that point.
Yeah. I did 3 novice races, and then the race director at that time called me into the office at the end of the 3rd weekend, kind of blindsided me a little bit. I thought I did something wrong, was in trouble. He grabbed my license from me, tore it up, handed me a probational expert license, and 3 rounds as a novice, and then I got thrown to the wolves, and I decided to go from an R1 to an R6. Oh,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, 3 rounds on basically a bone stock R1. Got enough points to get bumped out of novice, and then went right into expert on an R6. All the guys trying to make the AMA grids and make a name for themselves on a 600. I'm out there gridding up against, going, yeah, what am I doing here? I got a wife and kids, and got to be at work Monday morning.
Yeah. Well, how was that swap going from a 1000 and novice to a not only bumping up to expert, but also down to a 600? What is that?
Before you answer that, Jeff, I'm gonna say I mean this with nothing but love, but you are a mountain of a man.
I was a little smaller back then, not a whole lot, but a little bit.
Well, I don't mean like weight or anything. You are a big guy, so
yeah.
I mean, that part couldn't have been smaller probably back then.
No, I had a lot working against me on that 600.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that were kind of coaching me and helping me along were like, look, if you can get quick on a 600, when you get back on a bigger bike, it's just going to make it that much easier. And they weren't wrong. I learned racecraft riding a smaller bike. It teaches you a lot of discipline and to learn the right way to ride when you don't have that right wrist to rely on to make up for your mistakes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You can't just grip it, rip it, and get it over with in the straight, and then kind of meander through the wrist.
Yeah. Well, you can, but you're only going to get lucky so many times doing it that way.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, even on a 600, I've had a couple of times where, I got a little too throttle happy on a 600, and I'm going back to like the first gen R6s. They weren't powerhouses, but I had a guy that I was working with back then that found every ounce of power he could get out of them to kind of offset my size disadvantage. WSMC, I was never like a top 5 guy in the expert classes. There were just too many guys back then that were, they were top 5 in AMA grids.
Right.
And, me being just, a guy working on a shoestring budget, being, 40, 50 pounds heavier than they are on, a shop built bike. It wasn't, I wasn't going to compete against those guys. But I did, we had a CCS thing here in the area for a couple of years, CCS Southwest, which was, they're still back east. They're pretty big. The Race of Champions down at Daytona every year. And, they got some club level stuff on the East Coast. They're pretty much gone out here, but I did really well for a couple of years with those guys. And then they kind of went away, and I kind of walked away from the 600s, went back up to a bigger bike, and just kind of messed around here and there.
So how many racers would they pull out? Do you remember at WSMC back in the glory days?
Pull out, like, as far as
like how many registered racers would they get out there?
It was a lot like CVMA. There were, 25, 30, 35 bikes on a grid for every class.
Wow.
There were some, like, they called them dinosaur classes. It was like old bikes and singles and stuff like that. They might have like a 8-10 bike grid, but like the 600, 750 and 1000 stuff was all 25, 30, 35 bikes. The fields were pretty deep. And not only were the fields deep, again, there was talent out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Steve Rapp, Anthony Gobert, Tommy Hayden, some older fast guys back then, like Tony Myring, my buddy Carl, Jeremy Toy. Those guys, they were Formula USA, AMA guys, consistently doing very well at the pro level. And then, they were the guys at WSMC back in the day.
So is WSMC still running, or is that
No, I think I want to say the last year with them was like 2009, 2010, something like that.
Okay.
The owner of the track kind of chased everybody off with the way he thought the race club should be run.
Interesting.
So,
okay. Well, that's sad to hear, but all right.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
So how do you think, I mean, because as me, an old guy, but new to the sport, Easton is a young guy that doesn't remember anything because,
He hasn't made the memories yet.
He hasn't made the memories yet. But how do you think WSMC in its glory day compares to CVMA now?
I think CVMA is the modern day WSMC, which is why after spending one weekend around these guys 4 years ago is when I decided I need to come back. I need to play. And it's just WSMC was always, it was a big family. It wasn't about, hey, how can I get one up on you? Although on the track, it was about that. But in the pits, it was, hey, man, your bike's broke. What do you need so that you can make this next race so that I can beat you on the track instead of in the pits? Right. And that's exactly what CVMA is. It's everybody comes together to make sure that you get everything you can out of every weekend.
You said there was a lot of top talent at WSMC, and obviously there's a lot of top talent going out to CVMA.
Yeah.
But in CVMA, we always hear because it's a winter season, so it's a way to keep fresh. It's not interfering with Moto America. How are the AMA guys hitting that up back in the day? WSMC, was it in between weekends? Was it?
I think WSMC season was real similar to Chuckwalla. I think May was. I'm trying to remember how the schedule worked for WSMC. No, you know what? No, I think when they weren't racing the nationals, they were, any of the local guys were coming out collecting checks from Willow. So I think I think the only month we had off at WSMC was December, maybe January. So there were a few months that the pros didn't have any AMA rounds to worry about, but then the weekends always kind of worked around the national schedule.
So you mentioned it. So that brings up another question I was going to ask you is, so CVMA is paying. I mean, there's classes that are paying purses out there. That is not something I have at USBA, for example. How does what CVMA is doing now compare to the money that was being paid in the WSMC days?
So Willow was never, not until they started running the 200, the Toyota 200, it was never a big money thing. The F1 race, I think, maybe paid $750, $100 for a win in the high times, maybe. The 200 was big money because they had a lot of sponsors for it, and it was like once a year, kind of like the Daytona 200.
Right.
It was the Toyota 200 at Willow. And that was only the last few years, like 07 on, I think they did it, 06 on, something like that. You weren't doing it for the money back then. You were doing it because you enjoyed doing it. Between the contingency, Honda, Suzuki, Cowie, whatever bike you were riding, if they paid anything, you might make $25, $50 from Dunlop and Motul and, whoever else. And I think a race win for Willow was $200 or something. You might make $300-$400 off of a race. Yeah.
Before inflation. That's like thousands and thousands of dollars now.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. A set of tires back then was $300, I think. So you didn't cover a set of tires if you want to race at Willow.
Yeah.
So, and to be fair, the only races at Chuckwalla are the shootouts, and those are the money races. Now, Tony from Rider Gears, Open Super Sport, Richard from Apex Assassins is Formula Open. Corey's brought some sponsors on for different classes, Dell's Flooring and Hudson Valley Motorcycles. Those guys are doing some stuff.
And so, Yellow Dog IT, I got to shout him out because I didn't.
Oh yeah. That was a new one last month.
Huh? Sorry.
Was he a new addition last month?
Yeah, he was new for round 3. And if he's happening to listen, I need his help, so he can reach out. And I'm a customer.
I didn't mean to cut anybody out there. I just,
I understand. I only brought him up because I was kind of keeping an eye open for him. I wanted to talk to him, never got the chance.
Right.
I think, as a young guy that is personally at least invested in the sport, maybe a little more than personally, but you've been around it for a while. Been, from dirt to the road to racing, and then maybe out of it for a little bit, and then came back and worked at multiple dealers. In your opinion, are we on an upswing? Are we on a down? Are we about the same as we've always been?
No, I think we're definitely on an upswing.
Okay.
Not to throw politics into this, but if our economy can stay healthy enough to keep everybody able to continue, I think we're going to continue this trend for quite some time. Between Aprilia and Kawasaki and some other manufacturers kind of really blowing open some segments, I think other manufacturers are going to have to take notice and follow suit.
Right.
And to me, that is the biggest way to grow a sport, is create affordable grassroots classes and need, like Aprilia with the 660, Cowie with the 400s, that kind of thing. I think, when I first started, those were some of the biggest grids, were the Formula Twins and the lightweight twins, and the guys on the R7s and the 660s, and then all the people on the R3s and the Ninja 400s and that kind of thing. Those are, those classes are what feeds our sport and what gets people into and then wanting to progress up through the ranks are those classes. And I think that the manufacturers are crazy if they're not paying attention and don't know this.
Fair enough. So that being said, though, where this might still be opinion, but where's BMW? What's
They're
going on
asleep
over
at the
there?
wheel right now. I'll be blunt about it. The president of BMW was out at Femwalla a couple of years ago, and I said the same thing to her. I showed her all of these people on little bikes. She was there for Femwalla and then stuck around for SoCal Track Days. And okay, Trudy, here it is. Where are we going? She told me to be patient. That was 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Hey, Cole, there you go.
Yeah.
The S700RR might be on the way. Who knows?
I really thought we were going to have like an S400RR is where I thought she was going with it, but we'll see. I don't know.
All right. Well,
if you
that's
hear
more
one of them coming, I'll buy it from you.
Save the crate. Don't even put it on the showroom.
Now, apparently in Europe, there's a twins class, like a spec class in Europe, where they're running. BMW makes a model called an F900R, which is a twin, but it's a larger twin, obviously. And there's some kind of a spec class in Europe on that, which I haven't seen or heard anything other than BMW announcing that it existed. I'd like to see some stuff on that. That might be kind of an eye opener for the U.S. here, and the U.S. market kind of beating their fists on the desk to Germany, going, "Hey, we need some product here."
Yeah.
Well, no offense to the Germans, but I may or may not, work with a German company in my normal life as well. And 2 years is nothing, man. I mean, they're just starting. It's coming.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, so do you think that we've been talking here about how BMW is getting more and more on the grid, at least where you're at, and maybe that's all thanks to you and Steve, like you mentioned, and Long Beach in general, Long Beach BMW. But on the opposite side of that, do you think BMW does take a hit because of their lack of sport bike inventory, or are there not really that many people buying sport bikes anyway?
Well, there's not a surplus of S1000s right now. I probably, if I could find 4 or 5 bikes, I could probably get 4 or 5 more guys out there with us right now. We haven't had any inventory to be able to get out there. So I don't know that it's an inventory thing. Well, they definitely don't have the inventory. If they did, I think the numbers would grow. I think that no matter what BMW does, I think if they put out a good product, people are going to buy the product. Just like Yamaha, just like Suzuki, just like Honda.
Yeah.
Honda disappeared from grids because they didn't have anything for so long.
Right.
Now with the pirate bike, the RRRRR 1000, Yeah, there's a few guys that are kind of dabbling and dipping their toe in that, but Honda just hasn't been relevant in years
Yep.
because they don't see a value in grassroots racing.
Yeah, which is so, and that kind of, after talking to you and having this discussion, it kind of brought up Cole's over here trying to claim that BMW is coming to MotoGP eventually. Who knows? Obviously not this year, but
hold on, you're doing him an injustice. Have you heard my argument? I'll give you the bullet points. So Top Rat goes and rides a Yamaha MotoGP bike. He felt like he got dissed a little bit because they didn't spend the time he wanted. They basically said, "Here, go turn some laps." Yeah, we did it for you.
mm-hmm.
BMW then backs up a truck full of money to him, possibly. Or, I mean, why did Top Rat go to BMW? BMW paid him more money than he could turn down. He loves the idea of winning on a bike that's never won because that means more to the world than winning on a bike that's already proven itself. There's all these reasons, but what if? This is my imaginary land. Easton said at the opening that we don't lie to people. This is Cole's imaginary land. What if?
Opinions here.
Opinions. What if BMW came to him and said, "Hey, we know you have aspirations to ride MotoGP. We would like to run MotoGP, but unless that bike's already being built today, it ain't happening for a long, long time. So let's get you out here on the World Superbike. Let's prove to the world that we can make a fast bike, and we're going to start developing that bike now with you, and you can be our first rider on the MotoGP grid with it." That's Cole's dreamland, because there is 2 spots that Dorna is refusing to let anybody take after Suzuki left. So either Suzuki's coming back or they know who's coming.
Or somebody else is coming.
And I can't see Kawasaki coming back.
I will say this, BMW is trying a lot of outside the box technologies right now.
Okay.
So, and the only place I see fitting to give it a real go is in MotoGP.
Interesting.
So in my imaginary world, Cole's imaginary world isn't too far off we could be completely 180 out, but yeah,
but hey, we got 2 opinions matching up here, so
yeah.
Who knows? Maybe we're onto something.
It could happen.
Well, I was just going to ask. You mentioned Honda's has been in the game. They don't seem to take the weight in grassroots racing as we're you're coining it here today, and I'm sure it's not necessarily your term, but it kind of sounds like your big companies over here that are in MotoGP don't care about the little boys down here. But BMW, who's not in MotoGP, is the one getting out there and helping the club racers and being involved in the smaller communities. And I'm kind of curious. And honestly, we could answer this just by Googling numbers, I guess. Obviously, Honda's a bigger company because of everything else that they make. But as far as the motorcycle world, which is better? Again, opinions here, but is it better for Honda to be so deep in MotoGP and not care about the young guys? Or will we actually see more from a company like BMW who's out helping out the club racers?
I think they all contribute to the big picture. I'm going to divulge a little industry info here.
Okay.
I didn't come up with the phrase. I didn't come up with the name, but a lot of industry folks that I'm friends with have always referred to Honda as the evil red empire.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm. They were very resistant to change, and it was their way or no way. And HRC, if it didn't fit within HRC's guidelines, it wasn't even an option. That is, to me, why the CBR line kind of died away. Companies like Yamaha, Suzuki, Kawasaki, always trying different things. Hey, let's see if we can make a go at World Superbike or AMA 600s or whatever class. Let's try and help these guys to an extent. BMW, in my 20-some years in the motorcycle industry, has been the first company that has had an employee like Steve Weir at almost every event and available to almost every BMW owner in the country, where nobody else has. You
Right.
have to know somebody who knows somebody to get in with, Chuck Graves when he was running the Yamaha program, or Richard Stamboli when he was Attack Kawasaki, or Rob Muzzy back in the day when he was Cowie, and Yoshimura Suzuki. It was always the core group and their friends.
Mm-hmm.
But BMW has taken the approach where it has to be everybody on our motorcycles has to have the same access to Steve and data and knowledge and help. Whether you're Corey Alexander or Jeff Whitmer, you have to have the guidance and the help with our product that
Okay.
that is going to help move you to the next level. I haven't seen that out of any other company. Honda is probably the worst at it, and I'm not bad mouthing Honda. I have a lot of good friends at Honda, American Honda, but Honda is probably the worst at it. BMW being the best, and you got everybody else everywhere in between. I can't speak for Ducati. I've never worked with Ducati at a Ducati dealership. I've been in Aprilia. I know some Aprilia people. There's a big spread there, and I think BMW is definitely at the tip of that spear
Okay.
because of here in the U.S.
Right.
because of people like Steve and some of the other folks around the country that make sure that you get what you need when you're on a Beamer.
Yeah. Well, that's super good to hear. That's nice. I mean, obviously, Cole, you went and spent 1 week down in California, and here we are talking to Jeff on the podcast now. So there's that at least. So
Thanks,
good.
Jeff.
Yeah, we're going to get you there too, Cole. We'll get you into the 49s just like we did Mike last round.
I like it. I get this wing fixed, and I'll be there.
Yeah. I got to
get this wing fixed to get there.
You don't need that wing fixed to get there.
Yeah, that's true. I probably ought to break it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's why.
Oh man! All right, another dealership question for you, because
Sure.
I'm a younger guy. I got younger friends. None of them really. I got one friend right now that does actually want an S1000. That's his dream bike.
Yeah.
But no one's super current on sport bike news. You got to be in the niche to know. If a young kid walked into your shop and had the means and bought an S1000, how likely are you to ask him about, hey, have you gone to the track? Do you?
Everybody that comes into our shop, I ask them. My sales department always brings them to me. Hey, Jeff, Jeff's our track guy. He's the S1000 guy. What are your intentions?
Okay.
And
Right.
I offer every one of our customers Friday with Apex
Sweet.
as part of buying the bike from us. Some I think one or two guys have taken me up on it, but yeah, no, I talk to every double R customer that we have.
Well, good to hear. Good to hear. I think other dealerships in the country could definitely take some notes from you. Not to badmouth anyone, but that's the type of stuff I like to hear at least. So that's good.
I'm coming to get my next one from you.
Hey, we're here
Tomorrow.
for you. Whatever you need, bud.
I mean, it sounds like you don't have inventory right now, but
Now 24s will be on the ground in about a week and a half.
so what do you think a guy in my situation? So I want another S1000, but a guy in my position, what's the benefit of an M?
Ooh.
Knowing up front, like there's not just some guy with more money than brains that's going to go buy the M because it's the top of the line. My intent is to take it to the track. Should I buy the S or the M?
Right now, I'd say the S. You're just fine. If BMW comes to the table with an improved model next year, that would change. But the frame used to be different on between the S and the M. In 23, it got the M frame. Now it's internals in the engine, kind of like an R1S versus an R1 versus an R1M. It's kind of along the same lines. Probably not quite as drastic as an S to an M, but R1S to an R1M. You got some aero stuff with the M you don't need. You've got some internals on the M that at our level. Will it help? Yes. Are you going to get 10 grand, 12 grand worth of enjoyment out of it? No, probably not. So the M, I think if you got more money than good sense, or you're going to go and grid up at Moto America, go for the M. the rest of us, NS, with the right tweaks on it, you're going to be more than happy.
Well, I always, our friend Ken Hill said, he always says you have to be either a mechanic, a hot rodder. How does he say it?
A racer or a builder.
A racer or a builder. You can't be both.
Yeah.
This is an opinion he has all the time. For me, I'm trying really hard to be both because I think it's possible. I want my bike. I really care what my bike looks like, right? And if I crash it, then I'm gonna fix it. But I really care what it looks like, and and just personally, if you take all the guts out of it, I just don't like the M.
I think the bodywork on the M is sexy.
All right.
I don't know that, one of the Apex guys took a 22S and made it look like a brand new M, and it cost him a lot of money to do that. I don't know if I would spend the money on the aesthetics, but, he chose that route. I'm not mad at him. I think that bike was gorgeous.
Right.
But, as far as mechanically, though, an S, you can get just as good on an S as you can on an M.
Well, good to know.
And, that whole, you can't be a racer and a builder. Are you guys familiar with Chuck Graves? Do you know who he is?
Yes.
Okay.
Heard the name.
He was just as fast on a bike as he could make a bike.
Yeah.
Well, I think we might have said that wrong.
Ken's point was that if you build your own bikes and you care about how they look, that will tear at your brain while you're riding.
Oh yeah, you got to focus on one or the other. You can't do both. No, I completely get that. But Chuck is one of those guys that disproves that theory. He's an oddity, though.
Yeah, there's definitely people out there.
Yeah,
yeah. My only I have to say I think I agree with Ken Hill. If you want to be top notch, if you want to go race and and be the best, then you absolutely can't care about the bike at all. Right. However, on the opposite side, which I don't think is what he was getting at anyway, but I think it's definitely important to know the mechanics of the bike and understand, a rider that can come back to a team or come back to himself and change the way a bike reacts based off of what he's getting, or change his input based off of what the bike is giving him, is going to do better than a rider that's just like, I don't know, this bike's not working, but I can't tell you how.
Right.
In my opinion. So, anyway, enough on that. But,
well, in the day of data, data usually tells the story to these guys like Steve and Chuck and Richard Stamboli. They can look at the data and go, all right, well, my bike's fine, but my rider's not. So how do I get my rider fine and have him ride my motorcycle? And that's the big difference between today and when I started is, you got all these guys that, one of the guys from Chuckwalla, when he was just a canyon rider, he's like, how do you ride without traction control? It's easy. Here's your traction control and here's your ABS. These kids, they don't know. And I don't mean that in a bad way, calling them kids, but these young guys may not have learned how to ride the motorcycle as much as they've learned how to use the electronics.
Exactly.
It's interesting you bring that up. We might actually have a video coming out on the channel here in about a week that just as a sneak peek for anyone listening. I don't know, we get less listeners on YouTube than we do watchers, but I did just film a video talking about exactly that. How in my personal opinion, I think a lot more people need to go buy used Japanese 600 sport bikes without electronics on them. Go ride them, go race them, and then get whatever you want after that.
Yeah.
So,
that
sums up like the whole video. So don't, if you don't need to watch it, then don't. But just kind of my thoughts and feelings on that. So it's nice to hear that from somewhere else also, because I actually kind of wanted to possibly dive into that with you. Just maybe your feelings, just a little bit deeper on that. How the electronics, the aero, all of that. I mean, you get a new BMW, you get a whole whiz wheel on there now.
Yeah.
To adjust everything, which is sweet for someone that kind of knows what they're doing. But does that actually hinder the beginning motorcyclists?
I think that it does. Just to kind of go back on my comment a few minutes ago, where these young guys are learning how to ride the or how to work the electronics and not ride the motorcycle. Where if you can ride an analog bike for lack of a better term, ride an analog bike and learn how to ride it and manage the brakes and the traction yourself. I feel that it will make you a better rider, and the rider aids is with ABS and TC and slide control now. They're going to aid you, but they're not going to ride it for you. And I think that's the biggest disappointment that I have is these guys aren't learning how to ride. They're learning how to use all the functions of the bike, which I don't think I'm alone in that. I think I've just heard, I want to say it was Casey Stoner just made a comment publicly about, hey, dumb the bikes down and let these guys ride the motorcycle instead of the motorcycle taking care of the rider.
Mm-hmm.
I think you would see a much bigger gap from 1 to 10 instead of everybody being in one pack because the electronics are keeping them there. You're going to see who can ride a motorcycle and who can manage the electronics. And I think that's the downside of where we are right now with motorcycles is electronics are everything. And I think we need to get back to riding the motorcycle.
I say if you can't double clutch a 2-stroke going up a steep hills, and you got no business.
What are you doing in life?
Right. If you can't keep it on the pipe, you don't need to be riding it.
Well, that's nice to hear, especially from someone that is at a dealer selling new bikes. Obviously, you got to sell new bikes to make money, but
I don't sell them; I fix them.
That's right. All right. Well, hey, on fixing things, that was my next question for you. Cole here's got a 2010. You still see those a lot, those early generation S1000s. How much support does BMW provide for, as a younger guy with not as much money? Maybe I can't go get a 22 or a 21, but I think that BMW is the best. Do we still have that available at the dealers?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you were at a racetrack, club racing, a 2010 S1000 RR, and Steve Weir was running around, he's going to stop and ask you, hey, what do you need? How can I help? How you feeling? What's going on? He's going to offer you the same amount of help that he offers Cole on a 22 or me on a 23, without question. I don't think that's, I can still get all the parts. Alpha still has stuff for them. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's an issue. I think as long as it's a BMW, you're going to be able to get help for it.
Good deal. Yeah. I mean, I kind of figured, just want to clear that up, make sure.
Yeah.
So I may or may not have watched the motorcycle scene from Mission Impossible yesterday. And if you need parts, they have at least 12 of those bikes somewhere in Hollywood.
So oddly enough, when I first started at Long Beach, they had a bike that was from was one of the movies. It was like one of the zombie movies. I can't think. I'm not a big movie guy, so forgive me for this, but it was a S1000 XR, and it was the Umbrella Corporation. What movie franchise is that from?
Is that The Walking Dead?
It's kind of like one of those zombie movie things.
Is it the Brad Pitt one?
No, I don't.
World War Z?
No.
Let Easton Google it.
Hang on. Yeah, we're bringing up Resident Evil final chapter.
There you go, Resident Evil.
Boom.
There you go. Yeah.
You know what I Googled for that?
What's
Movies with BMW S1000 XR. And what's funny, for your knowledge, that comes out of SoCal BMW Motorcycle Club.com. So
yeah, they call it it's called the DAG group.
Okay.
Southern California Area Dealer Area Group.
DAG.
But it was that bike was at Long Beach BMW Motorcycles when I first started.
Cool. I mean, that makes sense, I guess. Being right by LA, right by Hollywood there.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Should have made do you guys ever have a cardboard cutout of Tom Cruise? With the flannel flapping in the wind.
Yeah.
Oh man! All right.
You got to be careful there, because I just mentioned you're a mountain of a man, and
yeah, I am not.
Tom Cruise is like 2 inches taller than Easton.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? It makes me faster or something like that. So
yeah. How tall are you, Easton?
I'm 5'6".
Okay. All right.
No. Yeah, right on the dot. I mean, I don't know. My wife will tell you there's no way, but I swear she changes her height every time she goes. I get measured. My height gets measured once a year, and it's always 66 inches. So
that's why we're trying to get Easton racing.
Yeah, why not? He can fit behind the bubble.
It's true. I do fit on a bike. Right now, racing is not quite in the schedule for me. due to my schedule jumps around so crazy, but still doing track days and definitely planning on getting out there. We'll get there
Well,
eventually.
Cool.
Probably
So
not
what
on a BMW though. No offense.
We can't all be great.
Well, hey, we just got done talking about how electronics are hindering, right? So I got to start.
What are you
Start
talking
old.
about? I don't use mine.
Yeah, just turn them down.
Yeah, just turn it all off, the raw mode. Yeah. You know, on the opposite side of that, I did have a friend that went out on an R1, and he was doing okay. His lines were messy, but he was putting down some quick times for the lines that he had. And so
Right.
the trainers came out and they're like, "Hey, you know, you might be relying on your electronics a little bit much, so maybe slow down a little bit." And he's like, "Oh, they're all off." And they're like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I just have everything off." They're like, "Oh, all right. Well, you're gonna come do some follow laps then, and we're gonna clean those lines up because you're in trouble." So
We'll clean this up and we'll give you a contract at the end of the day,
yeah,
right?
yeah. You know, I mean, he saw your sticker. I think you have on your door in your shop or something, Cole, and all balls racing. And he's like, "I need one of those." And after watching him ride, I was like, "You might, yeah." So, but
Just a bearing company.
hey, man, you know
The best names come from somewhere.
yeah,
Right.
that is true. Well, I think that's all I have. I don't know, Cole. We can
Well,
keep talking for hours if you want.
Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time, but
I'm good. The wife's at work.
Oh.
I'm enjoying my tea.
I was gonna say, yeah, let's grab another and
Here, let me refill here. Well, I was going to do this outside, but the outside lighting isn't very good, so that I could have a cigar and my tea while we're
yes.
chatting here. But
Tea time.
yeah, Four Roses tea.
Uh-huh. Yep.
I like it.
You pour it in the bag first, and then.
So, what do you think? What's your thoughts on the upcoming? Well, hell, we got Supercross starting up this weekend. You watch Supercross?
I haven't been to a Supercross in probably 15 years. This is probably the first year I've even thought about grabbing some tickets and going. Yeah, I couldn't tell you who's who, but I always enjoyed going to Anaheim 1, being, that it's right here in my backyard. Yeah, I think, and that's another funny thing too. Like those guys, Jeremy McGrath and Jeff Emming, are the two guys that I've seen forefront of Supercross and motocross hop on road race bikes and be like, yeah, maybe not. Like Jeremy did well. Emick did pretty well. Mike Metzger, that was a guy that really made a run at it. Don't know why he completely walked away, but he was on a pretty good trajectory. But yeah, the motocross and road racing, that should have been a natural progression, but I haven't seen it like completely come to fruition.
Yeah, it really hasn't. I mean, I don't think anybody would make the argument that riding a dirt bike doesn't help, or probably vice versa. I mean, obviously a lot of road racers ride bikes in the off season. I don't know how they remember not to stick their foot out the wrong way, but
yeah, I don't know.
My introduction to Ben and Eric Bostrom were here in Temecula at the local dealership. They had a little ranch up in the hills above Temecula, and they came in one day. Eric was riding for Kawasaki at the time. Ben was over in Europe on Ducati. They were on summer break, came into the shop. Ben needed a motocross bike. I was the only one in the entire dealership that knew who they were.
Wow.
Went over and talked to them, helped them. We had, I don't know, we probably just gotten in 30 CRF 450s. And Ben went through every single one of them, trying to figure out which one he wanted. Finally, after an hour, and then Eric finally told me, hey, pull your head out of your backside, pick a bike, and let's go ride.
Mm-hmm.
He grabbed a bike. They went out riding, came back at the end of the day. Both of them, their hands were all blistered up, joking around, bought a bunch more stuff, back out. And then Eric and I became really good friends. Ben knows who I am, but Eric, if I called Eric right now, he'd be like, Jeff, what's going on, bro? That kind of thing. Those guys were like the craziest. We can do any kind of motorcycling racing there is and be competitive at it, and nobody else can. Flat track, motocross, road racing, you name it, they could do it. I can't think, well, maybe JD Beach is probably the only modern day guy I can think of that's even close to those two.
Well, I wonder, that almost ties back in, because I wonder how much the electronics on the road bikes have
Right.
affected that.
Yeah.
Because it kind of
I
levels
never
that
thought
playing
about
field.
it, but there's probably a huge correlation between the two.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been talked about for a while that not for a while, but America used to kind of actually have a place in MotoGP way back in the day, in the two-stroke days at least,
They
and
didn't have a place; they owned it.
yeah,
Yeah. Right.
and the
Freddie
theory
and
was,
Kevin and Wayne and
the theory was that that's all from our flat track racing out here.
Yeah.
The riders out here were used to bikes that would just buck and go crazy all over the place, so they could handle them on the track. And now, as things have kind of calmed down, I wonder if that kind of has made it harder to switch over and at least be competitive or at the top of the game, because there's so many electronics and aids to help the riders out on the road that it doesn't give you an advantage anymore to learn how to control a bike per se.
Yeah. I could see that thinking, but I think if you could make the bike work without it, it would be that much better with it.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I agree with that. Yeah.
have you guys ever been to a flat track race and like stood inside of turn one and watched?
I actually haven't. I've never.
I have been to a flat track race, but in the nosebleeds, if you will.
Okay. 2009, 2010, I got a Yamaha trip to the MotoGP at Indy. I was working at a Yamaha dealer at the time, and they had an exhibition at the Indy Mile that weekend. Kenny Roberts, Kel Carruthers pulled out one of Kenny Roberts' TZ 750 dirt trackers, and Kenny went out and did some display laps on it.
Dang.
Ben and Eric were there. Jorge Lorenzo, Valentino Rossi. We're inside of turn one. I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with all these guys. 70-year-old Kenny Roberts comes into turn one on that TZ 750 dirt tracker, crossed up, rooster tail about 100 feet in the air behind him. And I'll never forget Valentino looking at his handler, turning around and looking and goes, "That's crazy. I'm never riding that motorcycle." And he was supposed to ride it that night.
That's awesome.
Ben and Eric ended up riding it after all the other races were over. From what I heard, I didn't see it. We were gone by then. But I from what I heard, Ben and Eric both rode the bike and did pretty well on it. But yeah, that was an eye opener. Like, being in the grandstands, you're like, oh yeah, cool, yeah. At the rail in turn one, watching these guys come in, crossed up, backing it in, no brakes, going, oh wow, this is riding a motorcycle here.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Rossi turning around going, yeah, no, I'm cool.
That is
too
quite
much to lose. Too much to lose when it gets broken.
I'll say I've never not had respect for it's different. I don't know that I would want to do it, but I've never not had respect for that flat track racing. That's like
I'd love to give it a go.
It's insane to me to be in that much control of something that is so out of control, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's like the ice racing up in Alaska, the dudes that are out there doing basically flat track out on the ice. I'm like, you guys are nuts. Like that's insane, but more power to them.
Ice racing. Can I tell an ice racing story?
Let's hear it.
Sure. Yeah.
So my old man used to ice race, and Jeff will remember, I think, but do you remember they used to have when I was in high school, probably, they had these t-shirts everybody wore called Bear Whiz Bear. And it always had like a bear, almost like a totem statue of a bear, and it'd be peeing. Bear Whiz Bear I don't ever know if it was a beer. I don't know what it was, but it was one of those popular things when all the kids had to have a Bear Whiz Bear t-shirt or whatever around here. Anyway, I don't even know what they sold. Beer, maybe, apparently. I don't know. But
yeah, I think it was beer.
But my dad signed up for some races here just outside of Ogden on Willard Bay. They set up ice races, and they were sponsored by Bear Whiz Bear. And he was like, I mean, I had to be like 10 years old probably. And he went and bought him a CR 500.
There you go.
Because that's what he was going to do for the ice races. And
Perfect.
when we showed up, there wasn't even a class for that. And and to show my age a little bit, there was still three-wheelers, because the three-wheeler guys were complaining that they were making them race with the four-wheeler guys because they didn't have enough of them show up for a full class or whatever. But anyway, cool memory of mine was going out there. doing these races. We didn't know what we were doing. So my dad bought all these screws. So we're putting screws in the knobs, you know, to go out and race. And when we got there, we realized that they actually make ice racing screws. You know,
were you putting wood screws in there or?
No, the screws we were using, to be fair, were exactly the same length as what they were selling, but they were just like a flat blade screwdriver head on them or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it had a ridge around it or whatever. But the ones they sold there had like 4-point spike, and you put them on with a socket, right? And they none of them were like what you see nowadays. I mean, nowadays you see them, they got like 1-inch standoffs. I mean, they're huge.
Yeah.
Some of them ones you see them running. But anyway, we went out there, and it has nothing to do with anything except it was a neat moment in my life, I guess. We're out there racing. I remember they had to move the track for the second day because they ended up digging more ice out than they thought they were going to on the start-finish line. They had moved it a couple times. But, you know, he got destroyed. He was racing against – at first they had him in a class with like 2 people because there really wasn't a class for it. Then they moved him into the smaller class with all the guys that were actually on a circuit, and then it didn't go well for him.
The CR500 couldn't hang.
Well, yeah. Wasn't because it couldn't hang, you know, in a straight line and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, you know, we were talking about Honda earlier, the Evil Empire and everything. In Willard Bay, Utah, okay? It's right by Ogden, this little town, right?
That's north of Salt Lake.
North of Salt Lake, this semi came pulling in on the second day. I mean, this is a fairly low-budget ice racing event. And this semi shows up, all Honda. Big rig, Honda front, you know, the trailer, everything. They pulled in, they open it up. It's like the dual-tier trailer like they'd haul F1 cars in or whatever. And they start kicking out blood red. So I guess that's what year it had to be. Oh, man, I am getting old. It had to be like 87, 86, 87, because they started kicking out TRX 250R four-wheelers, blood red. And started screwing the tires. And my dad went up and was talking to because it was all Honda guys. You know, they had Honda shirts, gear, everything. And apparently it was the off season. They needed somewhere to test these things. And so they decided to come out there and see what this was all about. And it was anyway, but that's my story.
Well, was Honda receptive to?
Yeah, they talked to us. I still have some pictures, you know, the ones on paper, Easton.
What?
Yeah, they're not the ones on your phone. They're the ones on paper. I can take a picture of one and send it to you.
What are you even talking about? How do you get one of those? I thought you mean like you get online on your phone and you order it and then they send you like the canvas, like what you got behind you there.
No. These are the ones you had to go down to a store and hope you didn't have any nudies in there when you handed it over.
The photo hut.
Yeah, the photo hut.
I have turned film into Walmart before. Okay. I don't know about the photo hut, but anyway.
When they used to have like 1 hour photo and then you'd walk back out in your car and go, should I drive all the way home or should I just wait?
Well, now you just sit on your phone.
Go to McDonald's. Whataburger.
Yeah. You know what was the worst is it sucked so bad because you'd wait. It was so exciting back then to see what your pictures, how they turned out.
Yeah. No previews.
Yeah, and at least for me, every time, you know, you get your stack of 50 pictures back, you rip the envelope open and start going through them, and it's missing the head. And this one's, you know, all of them were terrible.
They have the rainbow over them on half of them.
Yeah, why was he 1,000 miles away?
Red eyes. And you got no do-overs. You couldn't just delete it and do it again.
Yeah.
The world is such a different place right now.
We're dating ourselves, Cole.
Yeah, electronics on motorcycles and cameras that take phones, or phones that take cameras, pictures.
Damn whippersnappers.
I can leave if you guys need to, you know, reminisce for a while.
You know, talking about ABS though, and all those electronics and things. I mean, we're starting to get into a world where it's illegal to sell a motorcycle without.
Yeah. I think ABS. I think they all have to have ABS now.
Yeah, I think as of a year ago or 2 years ago or not too long ago, it was.
I'll tell you, I had never felt ABS on a bike, and I took my Aprilia to a racetrack, and
I'm not riding hard enough.
Well, my Gixxer doesn't have ABS, right? And I'm not racing. I know I'm not that fast, and so I'm not braking anywhere near any level that many people do, but I'd never felt it. And then I went out on the racetrack, and my first lap out there, I had my ABS turned, I think, all the way up. It's 3 levels, that's it. And I was like, well, we'll just start with everything up and just kind of see. First time riding electronics on a racetrack, and I get to the end of the straight, and I feel it, and the whole bike's just, and I was like, what is going on? I barely pulled the freaking brakes on this thing. And it is unnerving. Because I've tested it in cars here and there, on a rainy day. I'll be like, what does this ABS actually feel like? And you just slam it just to kind of see. But on a bike, it doesn't really feel, at least on mine. And I'm sure they're all a little bit different, but I don't like it. I've seen the whole test, right? They put the 2 sticks coming out from the dude in the rain on the bike. Have you seen that video? The one without ABS. So they take these 2 like training wheels basically, but they go out about 10 feet. They're like, "What? This is why ABS is so important on a bike." And they have a dude in the rain, or I think they just had sprinklers on the track, but he's coming down doing 60 miles an hour and grabs the brakes. And on the first one, he just like hugs the bike, and the whole bike tips over onto the training wheel and kind of slides like that. And then the second one with ABS, you see it kind of shudder and eventually come to a stop, but he's able to actually hold the bike up. And that's like this is why it's so important.
Oh, that was probably Honda with their C ABS.
That would make sense. Yeah, it was an older video. It's not like a new video by any means.
Like 07, 08.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Well, I won't mention who put out a video, but there's a newer video on YouTube right now where a guy's testing all those theories, and he's proven multiple times in the video that a good rider with a good feel for the brake can beat ABS every time. ABS is simply to stop the guy that's panic braking when somebody pulls out in front of him.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I did some magazine stuff in the past, and one of the press events that I went to was for the Honda CBR 600 C ABS. And that was at the Honda test facility in like California City, up near Willow Springs, while it was pouring down rain.
Okay.
And that was the first time I had ever ridden a track in the rain. And it was actually kind of cool riding a bike with electronics, going, yeah, get that out of here. Let me ride the bike.
Even in the rain.
Even in the rain.
Yeah.
And your skid pad story kind of reminded me of that. Like they had us come through the skid pad, like, okay, turn all this stuff off. Yeah. How fast can you stop? And then, oh yeah, here's our ABS. Now, how fast can you stop? And I was like, all right, let me do this. I did it. Came back and they're like, yeah, we're not going to share your times.
Oh man.
That makes sense. So how often is your traction control going? I know it depends on where you have it set, but that is one thing I kept chuckling about at Chuckwalla is there is a ton of grip out there.
Yeah.
I'm not making any arguments. Had great grip, but I have never seen my ABS light was yelling at me, or not my ABS, the traction control would not stop. Like I've seen that light 3 times in all my track history, and at Chuckwalla, it might as well have just been solid because it was.
I actually talked to my tuner about it because I had my stuff turned way, 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 way down, and it was still over intervening.
Mm-hmm.
And they were actually like, well, guess what? We've got settings for that. So here's an updated tune. Put it on your bike and let us know. So we'll find out next month. But yeah, it's even with everything turned down at Chuckwalla, you can get that light to light up pretty well. You're on the side of the tire and you're grabbing so much throttle. It's just, you're putting everything to the test at Chuck.
Just nature of the turns and the track and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, you're not scrubbing a whole lot going in, and then you get to the gas so quickly out. If your TC isn't screaming at you, you're not riding it. So
there you go.
Good. You hear that, Easton? I was riding it.
Yeah.
What tires are you running, Cole?
What
tires were you running?
I was bouncing around. I was running R7s mostly.
Okay.
Dunlop.
So Dunlop, yeah. No, that's the 3s and the 5s are tough to ride out there. 7s and 8s are kind of where everybody's going. But yeah, the Pirellis, you can run the softer tire. You're getting one race out of them versus 2, maybe 3.
So I actually kind of got stuck on, and so me and Easton go to a lot of different tracks, try out a lot of different tracks, and I just kind of settled in on an R7. It works everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And R8 maybe scared me a little bit because I'd love a tire to last longer, but I need maximum traction,
Sure.
right? In my mind, just for a peace of mind, if nothing else. But when we were at Podium Club, I threw some R8s on both my bikes actually, and they wore so nice, and I didn't feel a difference on the track. And everybody kept saying, "Oh no, it's just kind of a Podium Club thing. You run a harder tire there." And I said,
Podium
"Okay,
Club
so
and Utah.
yeah." So when I showed up to Chuck, I still had some R8s to burn off at Chuckwalla, and I thought they felt fine. I switched to an R7. I didn't really, at my level, I didn't feel a giant improvement switching to an R7. So I don't know. I might be hanging around that R8 a little more often.
Yeah.
Hey, if you get more with the cost of them, if you get more out of it and you don't feel a difference,
Yeah. I don't think there's not a whole lot at Podium Club where you're not on the side of the tire at Podium Club that much.
Right.
Like at Chuck, you spend a lot of time on the sidewall. At Utah, not quite as bad as Chuck, but a lot of time on the sidewall. At Podium Club, you're on the tire a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, an R8. Yeah. And that's what I did, R7, R8. Did you were you out there for the massacre, or was it for CRA?
Yeah, for the massacre.
Yeah, that was an entertaining weekend. Did you see me ride the GS out there?
Is that you?
Yeah, I did one, maybe 2 sessions on the GS.
I think I remember seeing it.
I didn't know it was you, but yeah, I seen you.
I pissed a guy off so bad, he came off the track at the end of the session, rode right into the bed of his truck and left.
There you go.
That's the way to do it.
Dude, I had TC turned off, ABS turned way down, and he was on a double R. I was all over him through the whole track. He would pull away from me up the front straightaway. We were going clockwise, so he would pull away from me coming up the front straightaway, and I would close right back onto him as we came over the rise down into turn 1. I would be right back on him, showing him a wheel here and there.
Yeah,
and he got so mad that he came off the track, rode right into the bed of his truck, and left.
That's good.
Well,
and I was on a GS on knobbies.
I might have to leave, honestly.
Yeah,
that's good.
Good
I mean,
time.
I can say I know where he's coming from. There's been some times in my life where I have not been. Once again, I don't have racing under my belt. I'm not the fastest guy, and I've been shown up by some supermoto guys. And yeah, you hit the straight and you go nuts, and then they just dive in underneath you, and it's some random turn. You're like, what the, like, how are you doing that? For me, anyway. But they always take the weirdest lines. They throw me off, right? Like I've no issues with bikes coming in next to me or whatever, but I never expect them to come in where they are. Supermoto guys just have the strangest lines in my head. Maybe there's just something I don't know, but anyway.
Cole, should we let the cat out of the bag? Like, how big of a guy am I?
Yeah, let's do it. I'd like to know too. I mean, I know, but I'd like to know.
So I'm 6'3", about 270.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So double my height and
yeah. I'm twice. I'm 2 of you, Easton.
Yeah. Just about.
And what do you weigh, Easton? We didn't get about your weight.
145.
Yeah. Damn near double.
Yep.
So jealous.
Well, that's why he's got darker teeth than I do. That's why.
That's why it's Easton's miserable on the straightaways.
Yeah, that's true.
We've had a lot of time to, mess around with each other on track, and He makes me angry, especially with the Aprilia under him.
Well, that one just makes sense. The best was when I had an Aprilia parked in the pit and I beat the same Aprilia on my 750 down the straight 3 or 4 different times. And the dude, I purposely let him pass me in the last corner a couple times just because I was like, I passed that guy last time. Kept in front of him, and I heard him behind me, so let him come, and I wanted to get a look at it to make sure it wasn't 1100, and sure enough, it was. And then I just gone. So
Yeah, I did that years ago. We were having a private track day at the Streets of Willow. I was on a GS6R 600. I had a finance manager female on the back seat, and one of my sales guys was on a brand new like '07 GS6R 1000.
okay,
Came off of the skid pad up the front straightaway through turn 1 through turn 2, and I've got the mirrors on. He's on a race bike. She's on the back seat, and she's not like a little person, not huge, but little. We get into turn 2, and I look in the mirror, and all I can see is this dude in his camel, Rossi Camel Honda leather suit on a yellow GSXR 1000, cartwheeling out through the desert.
Oh man!
And I've got a girl on the back seat of a GSXR 600. We go around, come back in. Crash truck brings him in. He's like, "Yeah, man." He goes, I got in too deep on the brakes. Dude, you weren't even on the brakes. You were still like thinking about turning when you just cartwheeled and went for a ride out through the desert. And I got a nickname then, like "Suck It Up" was the nickname that the shop had given me back then. Because
That's good.
this guy tried to suck it up and come up on me with a passenger on twice the bike and couldn't. So.
Sent it out the other side. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, we had fun back in the analog days before TC and ABS.
The analog days. I like that. I'm gonna have to. I'm sad. That video I was talking about earlier, I already filmed that, and I didn't say analog, so kind of bummed. But
Coin that phrase.
Yeah, analog bikes, bring them back.
Yeah,
I'm so old. My video games like Excite Bike had analog bikes.
Oh man,
Space Invaders with no TC.
Yeah. They're just little squares running around.
Right.
Well, we better let me get your take. MotoGP, who you got this year?
I don't even know who's in it. I quit following that stuff when it became the Ducati Cup. I stopped watching.
Hey, what do you know? We ain't the only ones. All right,
It's not. We don't need to get on all that. Okay, Moto America. Then what do you think? Kanye again?
I think if Cam stays healthy, I think it's Cam's year.
All right, that's good to hear. I think that's what we're both hoping for. But
yeah. No, I would like to see it. It's wishful thinking, but yeah, if he doesn't get taken out by Ashton and everybody else, and stays healthy and finishes.
He's definitely got the talent. I think that's what we saw last year. Is he's got the talent. He can do it.
Yeah.
Which he did it before, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
But so
I think the better way to put that is the bike. We all know Cam has the talent.
Right.
The bike proved last year that it could do it.
Right. Yeah. So another bike other than Yamaha proved that. What do you know?
Just like back in the day when it was Mladen and Spies, somebody else won a race.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how it be. Well, anyway, Jeff, I do have some stuff to get to, and we talked earlier about how I'm in South Carolina and you're in California, so we got a little bit of time difference.
Yeah.
So, but it has been great talking with you. I don't know if you want to leave us with any wise words or any shout outs or anything like that.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank Bison Track for all the love. Long Beach BMW for all the love. Apex Assassins for all the love. CVMA Racing for all the love. Cole, we'll see you at round 4.
Oh, I can't do round 4, but thank you. I got a hill.
Yeah.
We'll come down and watch.
Maybe.
He's got a point.
He's got a point.
All right. Well, hey, if you're still listening, please go check out Long Beach BMW Motorcycles. Go say hi to Jeff. And if you're down in Southern California, by all means, as always, get out, watch a CVMA event. Think about buying a motorcycle, buy a motorcycle, and go race. And we'll leave you with that. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.